Hey Deepak, how are you?
I'm very good. Good morning. And as you know, it's been raining since last night, and there it's been
Yes,
so freezing too.
I'm completely so. Thankfully, both you and I are in the same town. And for those of our friends who don't know, both of us are currently in Dehradun. Out here, it's been raining the entire night and right now also. So मुझे आपका नहीं पता दीपक. I'm completely enjoying the weather. I love the winter here.
True, absolutely. I'm soaking it all in as well.
Completely. So before we start, I'll quickly do a small introduction of City Book Leaders and what we do. Two, of course, our guest and introduce him. And then, of course, the book 50 Toughest Questions of Life that we're going to talk about. About City Book Leaders, CBL as we call it, is a new age unique knowledge exchange with books as its medium of disbursement of knowledge and information. This is unique education initiative, of course started by Mohit, and it has a vision to spread the love of reading and importance of books in our lives amidst the era of digital changes. The concept has seen quite an amazing response and traction from both industry leaders and book lovers. Industry stalwarts and authors such as Mr. Vineet Nair, Mr. Gurcharan Das, Mr. Amitabh Kant, Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan, Mr. Bob Berg, Mrs. Sudha Krishnamurthy, and Mr. Bachchan, and some others have been part of the speaker panel, among many other authors and leaders. With the successful chapters now running in many cities in India, Singapore, and Dubai, CBL has various book-related learning initiatives for corporates, institutions, and individuals. Now about Deepak Ramola. Deepak, I have to say this. When I was researching about you, I actually went into very interesting places, from your LinkedIn profile to everything that the web says. And there were some of the facts actually made me laugh and smile, and some just made me think, I'll be talking about all of that now, but I'll let everybody else know what you do. There was one site when I was, researching, it told me the year you were born. Of course, I know you very, very young. All of us know how young you are and what fantastic work you've done in your lifetime. But when I saw you were born in 1993, I'm a mother of 15-year-old. I almost thought, my God, this guy is so young. Where does he get all this, wisdom from? It's just fantastic. This is really an age where people are still struggling to find, to know about life, let alone, learn and unlearn. You have already figured it out. You have already, kind of unlearned a whole lot of things, relearned, and now you're already spreading it amongst life, life lessons amongst friends and people, and not just in India, all over the world. So this is, just fantastic. I have also seen that you've evolved as a human being, and the realm that you now deal in is something that even very mature people, and I do call myself a little middle-aged, in my 40s, hum jaise log, we're still struggling to be there. It's just fantastic. Deepak, ladies and gentlemen, works as a life skill educator since the age of 17. I don't know if my son can think of that in 2 years' time. He has been featured in the United Nations and is a TEDx speaker. He's an educator, a writer, an actor, a lyricist, and a gold medalist in mass media. For those of you who do not know, his lyrics in the movie, what's the movie? Yari Teri Yari.
Wazir. Yeah, Wazir.
Wazir, I'm sorry, I forget the name of the movie. I remember that song on the way to Nainital and back with my cousins. That's the only song that we heard, and for you to have given words to that song, which went on to be sung and given voice by Mr. Bachchan, is fantastic. I think you have too many feathers in your cap. I don't know what all to talk about. It was also very interesting to see your LinkedIn profile, which, by the way, gleamingly states kindness ambassador at the UN. That definitely caught my attention. I think I've had the good fortune to meet a lot of people who have taught me, but I do think that this interaction is going to be very, very different. He also runs the project Fuel, which stands for Forward the Understanding of Every Life Lesson. So my little research tells me that Deepak has been collecting life lessons since the time you were 14 or 15, Deepak, right?
Yeah. Since 14.
since 14. And that translated into a very, very big project. It also has translated into this fantastic book that we are going to be talking about. The 50 toughest questions of life, finally, the book that we are going to be talking about. When I was flipping through the pages, I realized that, he has actually penned down things that will completely push you to think. You will find yourself, when you read the book, going through various areas of your emotions and life, and what you're doing with your life. It'll almost challenge you to think, and it'll almost challenge you to question a whole lot of things that you're doing, and hence it's also called toughest. मुझे नहीं समझ में आ रहा था इसको मैं किस सीक्वेंस में डालूं, दीपक, when I was trying to work on this script for today's book. अगर मुझे कोई बोले इन 50 toughest में से 5 toughest कौन से हैं तो मुझे नहीं पता. However, for the sake of this conversation, we put some questions down that we're going to ask you. And then we also have some questions that are not from the book that we want to ask you, because we also want to see the other side of Deepak. And post that, we are going to open the session to our audience. If any of them want to ask something about the book, or otherwise we will be opening that to everybody. Deepak, is that all right?
Yes, very excited. Thank you.
Thank you. So what I've done is, I've taken the book. I didn't want to write it. I decided कि मैं book में से पढ़ूंगी. इसके answers मैंने पढ़ लिए हैं, but I think both Mohit and I are very keen to know it directly from you. So they are very in the book. When you read, guys, there are 50 questions. For each question, there is an anecdote or a lesson, or something very, very interesting that is following the question. And in the end, it almost makes you slow down and think. So मैंने पढ़ लिया है, Deepak, but we want to know from you again, primarily for our audience here. The first one that caught our attention was, at least my attention was, does the world offend you or amaze you? I want you to tell me. I think I know a little bit of the answer, but I think everybody wants to know your view on it.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much, Mohit, City Book Leaders, and Sarika ji. Thank you so much for hosting me. This book has been long coming, and to talk about it, with your beautiful audience and more community people is amazing. Well, the question, does the world offend me or amaze me? I think I can take a guess after hearing my introduction from you. The world does amaze me a bit more than it offends me, because you cannot really soak the juice out of wonder and amazement and curiosity if you do not go with a catcher's mitt into life. I think it is very, very necessary. It's almost a prerequisite condition that if you want to be able to do more and do deeper work, you have to be amazed, even with people who offend you, because then you have to sit across them and not push them down, but lean in and say, wow, that's interesting. It doesn't match the value system I come from, but where does your value system find its roots? And let me be amazed by how that has shaped up your personality, has shaped up your worldview. So I think I have been more amazed than offended. It's not in the book, but last year, I was teaching and working with the inmates and convicts in the Dasna, Gurgaon and Faridabad prison. And some of those people have committed some of the most heinous crimes of the world. They have been sentenced to life imprisonment, or a lot of years of their life are going to be spent behind the bars. But to sit across them and understand what the psyche was is my first reference point to, I wasn't really offended. I went in holding space for them. But in the book, because you mentioned, I start with a story of Tulum in Mexico, where I had gone for a conference in 2016 that I had been invited to. And interestingly, while walking back from the Mayan ruins, which Tulum is very famous for as a city in Mexico, I was pointed towards with the friend I had about these two trees called Chachem and Chaka. And the Chachem tree is a beautiful tree, and the Chaka tree is also a beautiful tree. Both are identical. The only difference is Chaka is poisonous and Chachem is the antidote of that poison. But when people, touch Chaka, the chemicals or the fluid that oozes out of the tree causes severe rashes. I mean, the ones you would not want on anybody. But people run to a doctor and they forget to look right next to the chaka tree, chichem. If you rub the leaves or the bark of chichem onto your skin, it heals within hours. And what that story told me is how the problem has a solution nearby always. You know, even Gulzar Saab actually beautifully once said, when the first time I had met him in his house, he had said, Mukhra agar aa gaya hai to antra wahi milega. You know, usi ke aas-paas hai sab. You don't have to go out of the way. Even in Garhwal, Sarika ji, you would know Bichu Ghas is a very popular plant. Agar Bichu Ghas lag jaye, so you have a tingling sensation. And then people run in all directions to find a cure. While the antidote, the leaves of another plant right next to it, grow and can be used. So that amazes me about the world. And lastly, what also amazes me is that despite the COVID-19 pandemic, despite all the challenges working virtually, we are still here and we are still alive and we still have the time to talk to each other across territories. I mean, you know, it doesn't leave room for much offense there. This grit for human survival. Yeah.
True, beautifully expressed, Deepak. One of course, I read the story and I remember you also quoting Bichu Ghat, which literally हमारे यहाँ पे घर के बाहर लगती है, you know, not far. But you know, when I was just listening to you, I realized कि आपको 2-4 और books लिखनी पड़ेंगी because you'll have so much more wisdom and stories to tell. You know, maybe your 50 questions will not be 50 anymore. I think it's going to be another 150 very soon. If you already have 3 more stories to add, it's so fantastic.
And that's interesting because I'll tell you honestly, Sarika ji, I have come to believe in all these years of collecting life lessons and really, information from around the world. Knowledge is what you learn and what you accumulate.
True.
Wisdom is the use of knowledge. And so with that respect, each one of us is already wise, right? Because we have the power to be able to access that knowledge. So yeah, a few more books I think are in the pipeline.
True. And, by the way, this also tells me, I'll go back to the questions later, but Deepak, you are so young. So, you know, what you're saying, you know, when I was reading the book, I realized that some of this may have been said by other philosophers of various eras. And here is this young guy, okay? You somehow, I think what amazes all of us about you is that, one, what you're talking, but more importantly, what you're talking at the age that you are. वो combination somehow, everyone's like, ये तो कितना young है, इतनी deep बातें कैसे कर लेते हैं? I do want to take you back to how did it all start? I cannot imagine my 15-year-old son to come and have, such conversations. He does bring up, he does challenge my ideas sometimes. He will ask me a deep question and it will leave me thinking. But yet I can't imagine him going beyond that. Or maybe, as he progresses, he will. How did it start? How did, you become this really deep person, who wants to talk about journey and life and, wisdom and all of that. And I'm not talking now, now you're still in your late 20s. You've been doing it for more than 10 years. So take us back there and, bring us back here. Take us through your journey.
No, thank you for that question. And it's very interesting because it also allows me to share with everybody that one of the biggest myths I've been trying to break through my work is wisdom does not come with age. Only experience does. And if I quote Oscar Wilde, he said, wisdom comes with age, but sometimes only age comes. And
How interesting.
I have sat across 5-year-olds, Sarika ji, who have said life lessons that have been insanely beautiful and profound. Last year in Belgium, I was teaching and a 6-year-old boy said to me, my life lesson is, before you learn how to ride a bike, learn where the brakes are. And I thought, doesn't that apply metaphorically and figuratively to all our lives and knowing what the controls are? Also, I think in just this sense, I've sat across 98-year-olds and thought, really, that is it? That's what you learned in 98 years?
Yes.
And maybe rolled my eyes back to the moon and I think this is the biggest misconception that I grew up with. And people, when I had something to say, people always discounted it as, oh, you're young, you know nothing. But I knew exactly what I knew at 14 for a 14-year-old.
Yes.
And it was amazing.
Yeah.
I think we wait for us to get to 30s and 40s and 50s, and we think it's going to accumulate this fountain of wisdom and sagacity. But it really doesn't happen.
Yes.
I just saw last night while going back, it got really late at the studio. I was going back and I saw two men in the middle of the highway towards IMA fighting at 11:30, and they must have been in their late 40s. And I thought, I mean, you got to 40 plus and you're fighting in the middle of the night in that chilling Dehradoon winter at 11:30 on a national highway. I mean, where is then the sense and where is the maturity then?
Yes.
But to answer your question, it also stems from me growing up in a house where my mother had been pulled out in school, and by her grandmother, who didn't want her to study with boys or study at all.
Yeah.
And when I was growing up, I never believed my mother never went to school. If you meet my mother, which I hope you do because you're in the same city, or anybody who's listening when they visit, she is one of the most intellectual, humorous, and well-articulated people I know in my life. My dad has tough time catching up with her. Every argument, she has to win it. She cannot use English metaphors and proverbs, but she will use Gadwali Kahawate, and they will be so apt and so precise that she would make her point.
Yeah.
So when I was growing up and my mother would say, I didn't go to school, I didn't have the opportunity, I thought it's how in reality shows you see this almost emotional story bordering, pity that you want to hear so that the other person can do better. But my mother said that it was a fact. So I came to believe it because I asked my Nani and I asked my Nana ji, and they said, yeah, she didn't go to school. But I also figured that she learned from life, and life was her biggest classroom.
True.
And I thought if she is learning simply by living, that means everybody who's living is learning something. And where can I find that information? I couldn't Google it. I couldn't type Sarika Panchhi's life lesson or Mohit's life lesson. It wouldn't show up.
Yeah.
And I was discontented with the fact that you had to be rich and famous to create impact with what you knew, other than outside your family and friend circle. So I started collecting these life lessons at age 14, and I can admit to everybody, it might sound amazingly profound, but my goal was that by the time I get to 18, I'll be the first human in human history to commit no mistakes, because I would know so much about everything, I would not falter.
Yeah.
Only to realize when I got to 18 that would have been the biggest mistake of my life, to not make any mistakes. What the life lessons help with is to create newer mistakes. If I already know 4 million people have learned something at the end of something, I can switch the plot and arrive at a fresher or a newer learning. And that's been my goal. That's why I do these crazy projects and I push the boundaries for myself, because I already know what a 28-year-old does. Or a 29-year-old does. And also factually, sorry, the website that you saw says 93. Somebody else also brought it, but I was born in 91, so I am.
Oh,
I am
you're young. Okay, no, you're older. You're 2 years.
I'm 2 years older, but I feel I really would like for people to know that every human being has value at whatever age they are.
True.
Because no life and no day is promised. So if I'm 28 today or 29 today, then I know something for 29 years of my life, and it cannot be discounted because I'm not 60.
Very true.
Sorry for that long answer.
No, I loved what you said. I completely loved. So 2-3 things while you were saying, I was, thinking. One, I also agree, and I'll give you an example. My son and I were walking recently. COVID has done a whole lot of good things too, by the way. So he and I started walking in the night. And one day we were walking and he asked me, Mama, what is work-life balance? So with all my corporate gyan and everything else, I tried explaining what work-life balance is. And then he says, but Mama, don't you think life is more important than work? Sorry. So I did say, yes, it is, in a very simplistic term it is. So then he says, should it not be life-work balance then? Why do we call it work-life balance? So when he asked me that, I honestly did not have an answer. And I thought, wow, yeah, it should really be life-work balance. We are really trying to balance life. and not balance work. The other thing you're saying is that just now when you mentioned that you sometimes meet 90-year-olds and you think, bas, is that all you got from your life? I was talking to a friend in the morning today, and he and I were discussing, today's session, and I asked him, do you have any questions? He said, would you please ask him कि जरूरी है कि हम aware हों, this entire thing about being conscious and being aware. What if people live blissfully unaware? And I know, we've had this debate at home very, very often, where some of my own cousins and aunts and uncles, all they've done through their life, like my mom's brother, opened a stationery shop in Paltan Bazaar. वो हर रोज सुबह 7:30-8 बजे दुकान खोलते हैं, हर रात को 8 बजे बंद कर देते हैं. So once I was debating it with somebody else that look at his life, he's not just lived it, because you need to travel, you need to have conversations, you need to be reading, you need to be watching, whatever. But for his entire life, he's opened that one shop every single day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for forever that I remember. And that's the time that somebody else who I was debating with told me, but why do you think that guy is not happy? Just because, he's not talking as intelligent as you. If all of us are just seeking happiness and his happiness lies in just opening that shop, then so be it. So I go back to the question that my friend asked in the morning, this entire thing about finding meaning in life. What if people are okay not finding it? And what if people say that koi baat nahi, chhod do mujhe, rehne do? What about, like you said, ki mujhe laga bas ho gaya. What if they are happy in that?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. I would say I am actually more happier for people who haven't found it. Because the moment you found it, to live with the knowledge of it is a bigger burden than not knowing it. Yes. So when people come to me and say to me, I don't know what my purpose is, and I'm like, congratulations. That means you can try so much more. I discovered it at 14, that what do I need to do and what gives me joy.
Yeah.
And I cannot go to bed without having the responsibility of not delivering it to my best potential. That pressure is always there. Those who don't know it is amazing. But I would say two things. One is, when I mentioned 90 years old, Sarika ji, it's not so much about awareness. What I meant by bas ho gaya is like, there are still people who are 95 plus that I've met, who are so much full of hatred and ignorance and opinions that I thought you got to 98 and you couldn't find anything that would make you united with everybody, but you were still so divided. So that's what I mean by the age factor. But to answer your question of is it important to be aware, I think it's like being loved. You can live without being loved, but should you? Not really, because the having of it is much more. The knowing of it is much more. Also, I think people confuse awareness externally, whereas self-awareness as the same thing. I see it differently. I encourage people, I don't force them, but I encourage people to be self-aware, because then you don't have to go travel the world, change the world. You can simply enjoy the world more when you're self-aware. If I'm aware that I am perturbed by, it's like having an allergy. If you're aware mushrooms make you allergic or give you a reaction, you will avoid it and you will choose your food judicially. Definitely. It's the same. If you think people who procrastinate, who are unprofessional, people who are lazy, who cuss, who are biased and prejudiced, offend you or annoy you, you will change your lane. I won't even say you will go and fix them. As Iyanla Vanzant, the great relationship expert, says, when you see crazy coming across the street, don't say crazy, I will fix you. So I think this awareness gives you more time. Otherwise, you will be invested in other people's business. You'll be invested in what people think of you. When I was growing up and in school, I was so heavily bullied for my voice. I was bullied for because I sounded like a girl or a kid. Even till today, every pizza delivery store and every Airtel store in Dehradoon has my name saved as Deepak Ramola. And every time I call, they're like, yes ma'am, how can I help you? And sometimes in the middle of something so urgent, But I just go along and I say, yeah, I want to order this. And they're like, ma'am, okay, it's going to reach you. It actually comes faster, I think, if you sound feminine. But I can laugh about it today. Because the awareness is, I enjoy my voice. When I was in school, I thought it was my biggest curse. I had no friends. I cried, I think, every lunch break because I didn't have anybody to hang out to in the sports ground or during lunch break. And in grade 11th one day, I was crying, and I think mentioned this story here in the book as well, that my English teacher found me and she said, why are you crying? And I said, because everybody bullies me. And she said, what do they bully about? And I said, my voice. And she said, do you like your voice? I said, I don't know. I don't have an opinion about it. She said, if you could wake up tomorrow and not speak anymore, would you be okay? And I said, not really. I would like to be heard. And she said, so you like your voice. Now we have a deal. If you like your voice, nobody can make you feel bad about it without your permission. So you own your voice and you own your story. And I kid you not, that was a day in March of, I think 2008. And it is the day today. There is not even an ounce of pain or hurt in me about how I sound. I enjoy it. I get paid for it. I'm doing podcasts with it. So now I'm calling those people up and saying, look, you should have been friends with me. But I mean, jokes aside, but yeah, really that I think is important.
Yeah, but on a separate note, Deepak, your voice is now going to people all over the world. Your voice is stronger than anyone else's right now that I can think of. So, you've really owned your voice and you should be so, so, so proud of it. It's amazing. While you were saying this, I come back to the next question. If forgiveness was essential to breathing, how often would you talk? I found this extremely profound. I've seen the blog that you've written on, the story that you narrated here. I've seen the video that you shot, incidentally, also in our own studio right here in Dehradoon. But I do want you to speak about that one particular learning in life. I think a whole lot of us would benefit from that. You're on mute, Deepak.
Yeah, I think people will enjoy listening to it. And some of them might have seen this video that I had done, which circulates back to me very often. Yes. There is a place in Banaras called Mukti Bhavan. It's a Salvation house. There were actually 8 when I visited. Over time there were 8. And when I visited Varanasi in 2016, there were 3 remaining. Kashi Labh, Mukti Bhavan, there was Ganga Labh Bhavan, and there was one more. And Kashi Labh Mukti Bhavan is most important is because I spent some time there. And it's interesting because it's a place where people go to die, because in Hindu mythology, you believe when you take your last breath in Kashi, you attain moksha or salvation. And Sarika ji, the interesting thing about this guest house is it only gives you 2 weeks to stay. So if you don't die within 2 weeks, you have to check out. And when I first read about that, I laughed because I thought, not only do you have to make peace with the fact that you're going to die, but that you're going to die within 2 weeks with a timer on. And I went there. I spent time with all the people who had checked in. Some were really unwell and could only speak 2 words. Some were a little older. And then I spent time with the manager of Kashi Labh Mukti Bhavan, Mr. Bhairavnath Shukla. And in his, introspection and reflection, he told me 12 lessons that he's learned from the 12,000 deaths that he's facilitated for the 44-year career that he's had. And I thought, what a job to have in life, right? Like you're allowing people to transition in that belief system. One of the lessons that I would like to share with everybody, which was so important to him and has come to be important for me, is resolve all conflicts before you go. And Mr. Shukla said that all 12,000 people, without an exception, had somebody to say sorry to or somebody to accept sorry from on their deathbed in their last moment. And in their final breath, many of them mustered the courage to say it or, accept it. Yeah. And so he said, I said, but, resolve all conflicts before you go means you're going to be on your deathbed. And he's like, that's the trick. If you're able to resolve the conflict before you even go to bed every day, you will not luggage it around till the end of life for yourself. And I think that's such a fascinating life lesson because an argument, a hurtful statement by somebody, or anything of that sense allows us to be so. I actually even asked him, I said, but what if you fought really aggressively because, you break up with somebody and you can't just text them saying, okay, I forgive you because I'm resolving one conflict. I mean, that'll be the antithesis of a breakup. So I asked him, I said, but I can't break up with somebody and tell them that I am okay with it. So he said, no, what you can do is draft the message you would want to send them in 3 months' time. So you've taken the first step towards resolving the conflict. And once you take the effort of drafting it in your own words, then you would also be able to think positively about what would life look like. And resolving also, last thing is resolving also with conflict. People think, when I say this lesson, they think, oh, okay, now you want me to say sorry to everybody who's hurt me. No, it's not that. Yeah. It means in your head, give it a closure. Stop expecting that sorry. Be finished and move on. It's not really calling them for dinner and going to their house for Diwali. It's not that. It's allowing yourself to let go and to move on. And there's a difference. I hope that helps and makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, why do we have to wait for us to do it, when we are dying? Only if this one piece of wisdom, we can all start applying it right now. Imagine how light and free our life would be. It would just be so fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I'll take 1 or 2 more questions from the book, and then maybe 1 or 2 off the book. Just to see the other side of Deepak.
Sure.
The other one that really interested me or caught my attention was, what does pain that no longer hurts morph into? All of us have gone through some kind of pain. I don't know a single person who hasn't. When I was thinking, okay, to wo pain ka kya hua? Of course, there were emotions that came out and how I dealt with it, or, and sometimes you end up giving pain to the others, and sometimes you just create so much stress around you that you don't know. What does that morph into, and, what should it really morph into?
For me, I realized it morphs into grace. Pain that some people have said strength, some have said acceptance, some have said forgiveness. But for me, Sarika ji, it really morphs into grace. When you're able to still take or hear the name of the person. Sorry, my dogs are barking in the background, so so it might be. But I really think that pain that no longer hurts is also art. It allows us for us to be in more sync with what we are doing, with what we are thinking, with what we are knowing. And I write in the book this para, which I would like to read.
Please.
To live is to be both benefited and bruised, and maybe bruised a bit more than benefited for some. The bitterness of a particular incident that harmed us quite often guides our whole narrative. One can taste the tension in the words, spitefulness in the coping strategies, and the vibe of something that remains unresolved in vengeance. From my experience, I have learned that pain can be easy to get rid of. It's the sadness that lingers and is the most damaging. Perhaps that is why I get terribly physically sick when I'm emotionally unwell. Maybe we find a clue in the answer to renew our new strength, maybe acceptance, maybe broken smiles, memories that don't affect you anymore, divine strength, prolonged silence, life lessons, courage, art, wisdom, empathy, insanity, caution living, eccentricity, a ticket to the past with no regret or fear, or even perhaps a deeper understanding of yourself. Pain that no longer hurts perhaps morphs into so many different things than we can even gauge or even begin to gauge.
Beautiful. You are a poet, you know that, right? Even in your conversations, of course, you were reading it off the book, but the way you express it is beautiful. But thank you for that. Okay, I'll go out of the book. I want to ask you, what is that one thing that nobody knows about you?
Wow. That's a really good one. I'm a huge procrastinator. Big. And nobody can say that looking at my work portfolio, my resume. I say that and people laugh at my face. But I'm just good with managing time on meeting deadlines. Like, I can write an entire thing in like a whole song in 12 minutes. Atrangi Yari, I think the first antara of that song, I wrote in 15 minutes at 12:30 in the night when Rochak, the amazing music director, called me. But I am a huge procrastinator. I mean, I will just delay it, and my sister says it best. She's like, things get done when you get started, but you don't get started very early. Like, you will talk about it for weeks. I will rant about it. Even this book, I thought about it in February, and I was sitting on a plane and I was like, let me start writing. And I couldn't start it till, I think, late March. I was just procrastinating, telling everybody I have a book idea and I'm so troubled. How will I write it? And they're like, you just write it. You stop talking about it. And it happens every single time. When I have a big task, or maybe it also stems because I like for things to brew inside me. Like, I want for me to know what the last line looks like. So when I sit on a computer, or I generally write in notebooks, I'm very old-fashioned that way. But so I can quickly finish whatever it is, and I don't think on paper. I think beforehand. So I'm a big procrastinator, and I think I can do another one. Is wow. The other thing is that I love curating Spotify playlists. And I love, like, for people to discover good songs and just like have a playlist to listen to when they're cleaning. I just love that. So I like on Spotify, I have a bunch of lists that I've curated.
So you curate it for others and you share it with others?
Yeah. It's all public, and everybody can, from morning chants to like going to bed sukoon playlist. I've created like 8 to 10 playlists for the world to use, and I love that.
How nice. I'll go on Spotify and I'll check it out.
Okay.
I want to now ask, you've spoken to innumerable people and you've been taking life lessons. You speak on relation, you speak on life, you speak on learning. I'm particularly interested in relation and, relationship space. With everything that is changing, with everything that you've seen, what do you now think of how marriage as an institution is evolving? In that entire space, what is your stance on that?
Wow, that's a very, very good question. I am not married, but everybody I've spoken to, including my sister who's married, I think I will borrow the answer of my friend Karuna Ezra. I was asking her these 50 toughest questions the other day. She's an author and she has this new novel out called The Heart Seeks Pleasure First. And Karuna said something very interesting. She said, we actually want to love people for what they want. We don't love for what we want.
You've gone on mute, Deepak.
Yeah, sorry. And so she was saying that, interestingly, that when we say, we want to love for what we love, the first question we have to ask is, what do we love? And when you have to ask, what do you love? You have to ask, who are you? Because then only you will identify your choices and interests. So true. I feel being in a relationship or being in marriage as an institution, I think first of all, everybody wants to find their better half in the other. Everybody I've spoken to who's separated or who's had a troubled marriage has said this. I draw a pattern from it that they were looking for their happiness in the other person. I think two full make one full happy marriage or one full happy relationship of any kind. If I am even friends with somebody and I think this person is my sole, reason to thrive, it won't happen. In fact, somebody in London many years back said to me a beautiful life lesson. You have to glow in the love of other people, but you have to glow by default in your own love for yourself and other people. Right?
That is so deep, and it takes us back to self-awareness, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You started the conversation with that, and you're again going back to that. Before you find it outside, you have to first find it.
And even in world faith, you read metaphors the one coming to my mind is Christianity, and I think in the Bible or somewhere, I might be mistaken, but I've read this, that there is a phrase called "my cup runneth over." And what it means by that is whatever is in the cup is for you. But whatever is overflowing from the cup is for the world, for your loved ones, family, friends. But people outpour their cups to everybody's cups, and then feel exhausted, feel burnt out. I have no shame in admitting I love myself the most. And my parents love me for it, because honestly, I didn't write this book for anybody out in the world. Of course, I hoped for it to benefit. I wanted to do this for myself. I've been teaching since 17 under no pressure. My parents, had no choice or decision in saying, oh, you have to be this person. I have been doing this for myself, not for anybody else. And when I start from that place, I am amazed how many people stand beside me or write me an email or DM me saying, thank you for doing this for me. I think when we are authentically true to ourselves, we're already helping the world, because that's one less person who's agitated by the world forcing them to do something they don't. So,
I like the way you put that, Deepak. Thank you. We'll now take some questions from the comments. I see a whole lot of comments that have come up, and I completely got so engrossed in talking to you that I didn't pay attention to that. So Suchi Goenka, she writes, hi Deepak, you meet people from various communities across the globe. How do you make them comfortable to share their life story with you, as each one is unique? Also, please share one tough incident that you faced and faced resistance. This is from Suchi Goenka.
Thank you, Suchi. I think one of the best ways to let people open up is by opening up yourself. So I never go into a community. I mean, I was invited to Nepal post the earthquake in 2015. And you cannot go into a classroom and be like, oh, I'm here to collect your life lesson and teach life lesson. They'll be like, damn you, we just lost our home. We just lost our family members. So you open up. You open about loss that you might have faced or suffered, and then you allow yourself to be vulnerable, to hold space for other people's vulnerability. So I never go saying, I want your knowledge. I say, this is what I know. And if it inspires or sparks something in you, voila, we have something amazingly better. You asked about a tough incident. Oh, there's so many. I mean, I'm thinking women in Kamatipura, sex workers of Kamatipura. I mean, I was taking their life lessons on brand management and customer negotiations. And I had some explosive stories come out, which were very, very hard to grasp and understand. But I can tell you one. I was in 2016 on a 90-day tour across Europe, documenting the life lessons of Syrian refugees who had been displaced by the war in Syria. And I was invited to teach in a prison cell in Amsterdam. And the interesting part about Amsterdam was it didn't, because it's such a packed city, it didn't have space to host these refugees in open areas. So they took the abandoned, empty prisons and they put all the refugees there. Now imagine you just left your country, you left your entire life and family, and you're now in a new country and a continent that you heard for the first time, and you're living in a prison cell. You'll be so frustrated with life. So I was invited to teach there. And I remember everybody in that room, all the refugees and people were amazing. There was this one guy who I think disliked me from my entrance, probably from the word go. And I would play a game, he would not play. I would ask him to smile, he would not smile. So I left everything in the middle of the session and I sat with him. And I said, what is your problem? And he said, the problem is you know nothing about me. Why should I participate in your session? And I said, I have all the time. I would like to know about you. So he said, oh, I was in Syria. I paid so much. I was smuggled through the sea route. I was for 16 days in a boat with 50 people that had a capacity of 20. All of the story. And as he's telling the story, there's another refugee in that room who walks up and says, no way, you were in that boat? And this angry refugee says, yes, I was on that boat. So he says, I was on that boat too. I was amongst the 50 people. And he says, oh, no, you could not be on that boat. And he completely refuses to believe. Now I'm more frustrated. I'm like, first of all, you're not participating. Now you're not believing. I said, why don't you believe him? And he says, this guy is the happiest refugee in this entire campus. He never complains about the food. He acts as a translator for young children. He participates in sessions like yours. I can't believe I got off the same boat and became this angry. And he got off the same boat and accepted it so well. And it was hard because I was moved to understand, and what that refugee said when I was leaving that campus is, he said, isn't it interesting, Deepak? I didn't want to see your face this morning. And as you're leaving, all I can think of how every experience in life is a boat we are getting off. And now you have a choice to either be like me for last 6 months or be like that person for last 6 months.
So true.
And he said he's so much happier. So, Suti, I hope that answers your question. But it's one of the memories that's engraved in my mind so clearly.
So true. Oh my God, this is so profound, Deepak. And this boat can be your life, by the way. It is literally your life. You can choose whether you want to be angry about, the boat that you sailed in, or you can choose to, be like the other happy refugee. Deepak, I'll take one or two other comments and then we'll go back to our conversation again. So we have Raji Anand here. Raji, by the way, is also a CBL member. He says, I have the same experience and it's vice versa. People till date, what they can do for you, sir. So I can completely understand. And to my voice was my strength, and I have always won competitions and enjoyed being what I am.
Yay, Rajiv, congratulations. There is no greater pleasure than being in front of people who call you madam or sir, in my case, ma'am, in your case, sir, and not be offended by it. To enjoy it,
Yeah.
It is so much fun. It's people are amused, Sarika ji. If you're not offended these days, I think I read somewhere, Varun Grover or someone said, there was a time when we used to define people by their hobbies and their interests. Now we define people with what they get offended by. So, it's a power in today's world to not take offense of who you are.
Yes.
So Raji, more power to you.
Thank you, Deepak. That is so fantastic. And we have Sushant Ajmani. I think he is also a CBL member. He says, lately I've realized that we have forgotten how to live with our dear ones. Now we are so much engrossed in our isolated world that sometimes we feel scared in involving ourselves into conversations with risk of getting hurt. I think that's pretty deep. Deepak, what do you think?
Sushant ji, absolutely. I think because the fear is also, the good question to investigate is, what is the fear arising out of? I think when I moved from Mumbai after living for 10 years by myself, my fear was every decision of mine would have 3 more voices: my dad, my mom, and my sister. And when you've lived for 10 years or in a nuclear family by yourself, moving to a larger family or a larger community always comes with the risk of more voices. But, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think negotiations are very important, even with loved ones. You cannot let anybody run all over you, because it's your life ultimately and nobody knows what's best for you. Even sometimes parents, they assume you want 1 extra chapati when you don't want 1 extra chapati. And they will keep forcing, and you have to tell them. It makes me uncomfortable. Really, in my home, when I moved back, it makes me uncomfortable if I'm served food by somebody else, because I feel overwhelmed with what is being served. So I take it myself, and my parents just couldn't take it in the beginning. They were like, how can you be home and serve yourself? Like, let us feed you. And I had to sit them down. And I said, there are 3-4 things I really want you to love and respect if we're going to live in the same house together. One is, I take my own food as much as I want. Nobody forces me for food. And then they told me certain things, about late night calls, and because most of my calls happen in the US, so they're like, okay, this is your cutoff time for parties and whatever things you negotiate. I think in every relationship, if अगर हम वो थोड़ी सी गुंजाइश रखें, तो बड़े से बड़ी चीज और बड़े से बड़े मसले के लिए जगह बन जाती है. But because we don't keep room, it becomes difficult. And as I'm saying this, Sarika ji, sorry, I'll take a minute more.
Please.
A wonderful friend of mine who's a massive advocate and legal counsel, Radhika Pereira, she told me something very interesting about space. She said, जो word है ब्रह्मांड, it actually doesn't mean universe. हम हमेशा ब्रह्मांड we equate it to universe or translate it to universe. She said it actually means space, vacuum. Because even in the Puran, she said it's written that before God had to create the world, before Brahmaji had to create Earth or all the planets, he had to create the space for these heavenly bodies to be placed. So, borrowing from the Vedas, the concept that in relationships, when you create space first, then you can create space for an argument, a conversation, an ideology, a thinking. But what we focus on is how am I going to speak to Sarika? How will I resolve this conflict with Sarika? Not how I will create the space where maybe the conflict will morph into love. So we don't know what to do because we haven't kept the space for it. Isn't it very interesting?
It is so interesting, and I'm so happy you say this. At home, my dad, of course, often talks about relationships. And he says there are 4 big pillars to relationships: caring, sharing, respect, and space. Equally important in equal measures, literally. So, when he was speaking about this, I went back to what my dad says. There are some very interesting questions coming. There is a 15-year-old Mansi Sharma. You have to listen to her and you must answer this. Good morning, I'm 15 years old and I often wonder why some of my closest friends abandon me overnight and I never get why. It hurts me. Any suggestions on how I should look at this situation?
Manasvi, you're 15 and I have been 15 with no friends. I'm so glad you at least had them in the first place. I would say, if they left you, if you've tried once, it's more than enough. Once is always more than enough from your end. And go make new friends. There are only 2 choices. And I can say this like, oh, it'll get over. The hurt will take time to resolve. I am 29 and it took me 29 years to understand that, or actually later because I faced it in school, but good 15, 16 years to get over it. But what helped me was making new friends. Now I have so many, I sometimes feel I should do a reality show on 31st December and tell which one made it to the new year. And all my friends laugh about it and they're like, you will be eliminated first if you ever do that. But I can joke about it now because I realize while we're waiting for others to accept us, we're also giving them the power and choice to not know us. So if 4 people left you, well, I'm happy to tell you, Manasvi, there are 7 billion people on planet Earth. And so you will have easily a billion, I would say, in your city, a million in your city or nearby to try and test out. Sample people. Think this was your pre-boards. The boards are yet to come. So enjoy it. It's okay. And I would say, as for the hurt part, it'll take time for you to cushion everything around it. The hurt will not go anywhere. It will just get cushioned with better things, so it will not trouble you as much over time. But make new friends; they'll help you forget the old ones faster.
That's really nice one, Deepak. The fact is that you don't need people for validation. We all know it, but it still hurts. And I love the way you're saying, you'll need to cushion yourself around it. The hurt will stay. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Here's another one from my friend Dheeraj Nair. He says, with all the wisdom gained through life experience, does Deepak Ramola now get angry, sad, perturbed, or agitated?
Dheeraj, you should meet my mom. She just told me this morning, your 50 toughest questions of life and all your workshops you have to apply on yourself tonight. I was so perplexed and agitated. All the 4 things you said, I don't think so angry so much, but sad, perturbed and agitated. When I'm very angry, I'm silent. I just don't speak to anybody. So I got that covered 6-7 years ago. I don't think so anybody has seen me angry for last 6 years. I feel your anger is as valuable as your love. You have to choose people who get to see it. It's a privilege. And I don't waste it on people who send me a nasty email or who don't do the job well. You can only see me broken if you've earned the right to. So I don't let people see me angry or sad to that degree. Perturbed and agitated, I think, one every hour. When you are out in the world collecting life lessons, you you are bound to, I think, use them for yourself. And I do get perturbed and agitated with people's unprofessionalism, with slow responses, with people who say one thing and not do that thing. But yeah, I mean, that's the world we live in. And I also enjoy it. It's like being human. And that's where you can apply the life lesson. If everybody was sorted, I won't have a career. So I think it's nice. It's nice that the world still goes on.
I agree. I completely also agree that you're very, very vulnerable only in front of a select few. You don't, show that side of yourself to a lot of. Deepak, I think there is a message from one of your teachers. I'd like to read it out. This is from Nidhi Navani. Hello, Deepak. A big hug from Army Public School, Clementown. As a teacher, I have seen your journey from school as a best debater to an actor in Bodyguard to a Yaya were collecting all life lessons to a lyricist to an author. Which part of your journey was the most amazing?
Oh, wow. Hi, Nidhi ma'am. Oh, I love my teachers. I think the most amazing part was, other than the career, I think with Army Public School, Clementown, I am so grateful to all my teachers, including Nidhi ma'am and Pragati Kapoor ma'am and all the teachers who helped me. Because what I try to do today, Sarika ji, is I'm just mimicking my teachers. When I was in school, there were 20 different individuals. Through me, the world experiences all 20 of them amalgamated and put into one. When I'm in a room in a community, I'm trying to imitate what I learned from my Hindi teacher, Shraddha Bakshi ma'am. She said, always enter with a big smile. When I'm with people who are in prison cells or in very vulnerable situations, I'm trying to imitate or mimic what I learned from my SSC teacher or my chemistry teacher. So I think there is so much that I accumulated from all of these people. But just to answer, Nidhi ma'am, your second part of the question, what part of the journey has been amazing? I think being an author now, people are very amazed that I'm writing this book now when I've been running Project Fuel for almost 11 years. And I had a book offer, Sarika ji, when I was 17. Because somebody said, a very big publication in India said, let us publish all the life lessons into a book. Right. I had so many by the time I was 17, 18. But I didn't want to. I said, if I haven't internalized them, I would never sit in a room comfortably talking about them. So 11 years later, when I'm talking about 50 toughest questions of life, I know it to be true because I have literally taught and worked with 400,000 people. So 4 lakh people are my database of reference. And that's when I am in a position to be able to talk about what is tough and not. So yeah, I think the author part, ma'am, is the most interesting. And also it's cool now. Like I love sitting with friends or people I'm dating or my family and say, aaj toughest questions पूछते हैं dinner table when everybody leaves me alone. So I think everybody, they're like, we're done.
Deepak, it's been a complete pleasure talking to you. We'll have to wrap it up in about a minute. So I will just ask this one question and I'll give it over to Mohit. The last question I want to ask is, out of these 50 toughest questions, what is the one toughest question? What is it? I know you asked this to everybody and that's how you also ended it. But what's that one that you'll call the toughest of the 50 toughest?
Oh, wow. Wow. I mean, I narrowed them down from 3,000 toughest questions that I had to answer over the years. So to choose one, let me think. Okay, the question I used to always ask before I wrote the book as the toughest one, let me come to that. Or can I do 2, Sarika ji, if I have your permission?
You can. Mohit has to allow me 2 extra minutes. Go ahead.
I think the first one is, Mohit, sorry, do we have your permission? Mohit,
Let me put it in a question. Who am I?
Oh, that is. I think for me, I've figured out. I think I've figured out slightly the part of it, but en route figuring out. But yeah, I think my first question, tough question, is what happened to you? I love being on airplanes, especially in US or long flights from Dehradoon to Chennai or somewhere, and sitting with a co-passenger and just saying, so what happened to you? And people are taken aback and you don't give them a follow-up. what happened to you? Something, and people will immediately say, oh, I got promoted last week, so amazing. Or someone will say, oh, my mother passed away 2 months ago and I miss her. What happened to you is a very tough question, because you get to decide what you're going to say, So that is one. And the second I would say is, how can someone make you feel loved? We all live in this assumption game, that, oh, acha, Deepak is a writer, looks like a geeky guy, let's gift him books. And I like books, but not on my birthday. And everybody for the last 10 years sent me diaries and sent me books for my birthdays. And I'm like, I want something else, But that's one thing. We live in the assumption of what makes somebody else feel loved. But when you answer that for yourself, how can someone make you feel more loved?
Yeah.
I think there is so much room to enjoy it, rather than live with the acceptance of what other people thought you love or will love. So when people say, oh, I'm going out, and I say, if you're going and getting me a gift, I'll tell you what to buy for me. Like, don't do a guessing game. I don't like to be surprised with gifts that I'll not use. So those two questions definitely are the toughest questions. And I think that also answers Miss P. Mehta's question, which is asked in the beginning. So thank you for that.
Sorry, for those of you who I couldn't take questions for, I'm really sorry. I apologize. We had 1 hour. We had a whole lot of things to speak about. There are some questions even on my list that I couldn't question Deepak on. So maybe for a later conversation, but we had to end it there. Deepak, thank you very, very much. It's been a complete pleasure. I look forward to our coffee in Dehradoon while you're still here. Yeah. And before we end, guys, you must go and pick this book. This question, what Deepak ended with. Yes. What happened to you? What I love about this particular question is how he has not answered it for you. He's narrated a beautiful story, and you must read the story. It's a very heartwarming story. I don't want to go into that because you must go and pick it. But it will force you to think and question yourself and ask. So go ahead and do that. Deepak, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarika ji.
Thank you, Sarika, and thank you, Deepak, and to all of you who joined in. Long back in my class, when I used to ask questions to my teachers, and everyone used to think that I'm trying to bully them. So they called me as Prashnavali. They used to call me Mohit Prashnavali. You will ask a lot of questions. Of course, my questions were very tough. Just imagine in a non-co-ed boys' college, the questions could be really tough for teachers. And that's how we started. But Deepak, I compare you to one of the persons I always follow, that's Jiddu Krishnamurti, and that's how his life has always been. He used to simply ask for questions. Yeah, questions le aao, bas main bata dunga. So much so that I was telling Sarika that someone asked, "Bada maza aata hoga na Jiddu ji aapko ye sab karne mein. How do you feel being giving answers for everything?" And just imagine he had a beautiful answer to that as well. And while you are collecting these life lessons across wherever you go, living, non-living, whatever you see and observe, I think that takes you beyond your age as well, and it has nothing to do with your age, I must say. It's truly a pleasure and a privilege. In fact, while listening to you, I thought, why not actually have more questions today? And I will just give my thanks in as many questions that I can put it. So it starts like this. Shall I say thank you to you? Why did you choose us? Does that now make us more profound? Or shall I say thanks to the learners who joined in today? And how, Sarika, you can do everything with so much meticulousness. How about we say thanks to the universe? You mentioned about universe. Will you all be with us in our journey of wisdom? Does your age mean anything to others? Shall we keep searching? Who am I? With Shivoham, Shivoham. Thank you, Deepak.
Wow, thank you. Amazing.
Mohit, you can do magic too. You know that, right?
Or you can write the second volume, 50 toughest questions with me, Mohit. But thank you so much, everybody.
Happy listening and reading. And there's one question which I would tell to everyone who has participated today. There's a question number 10 which says, are you okay? Most of the people do ask you, are you okay? No, just imagine, sounds simple, but the toughest one, believe me.
Yes.
So thank you very much, everyone, for joining in. Saturdays mornings are meant for us, for such profound wisdom for all of you. We look forward to more such sessions. Keep joining in. Take care. Thank you, Sarika. Thank you.
Thank
Deepak.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mohit. Bye.